October is a month that we observe Mental Health Awareness Day, yet the stigma around mental health remains. Michelle Dickinson is a mental health advocate and also a published author of a memoir called Breaking Into My Life. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you here. So I've read that you said that there's no health without mental health. What does that mean to you?
You could have physical health all day long, but if you don't have your mind in a healthy space, you're not physically going to be healthy. So you have to give that as much energy as you do your physical health.
And you're speaking from experience. This isn't just some idea that popped in your head.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your experience and why you wanted to write this book in particular.
Sure. So I wrote the book because my mother was bipolar, and I grew up with her, caring for her. And I know what that is like from the lens of a child caregiver. So I wanted to really share my story and write my memoir to help people understand and humanize mental health. So those who could be struggling don't struggle in silence or fear, and they raise their hand and they get the help they deserve ultimately.
It's really an important conversation. I know a lot of people deal with this, but there's not really these books that are out on the market, in part because you're talking about a loved one, you know, a parent or what have you. And your work really focuses a lot on young people.
Yes.
Is that because of your experience growing up?
Yeah, I had created a program for underserved children to make a difference for them, to have them understand that it's okay to raise their hand if they're not feeling quite right. And we have such a great opportunity to shape their relationship to mental health when they're young. Yes. So there isn't a stigma in the generation. So why not humanize it and normalize it for them so that when they feel anxiety, when they feel stress and overwhelm, they have the courage to raise their hand and ask for help.
So how do we start these conversations and then keep them talking? Because sometimes we know kids, young adults, they'll start to talk and then shut down. So we want to start the conversation, but keep it moving. What do we do?
Sure. I think, you know, the first thing that parents can do in the home is talk about their own well-being, talk about what mental health is for them. You know, having an open dialogue and, you know, conversation day to day has it be less of a taboo topic. Yes. And one that, you know, they will feel comfortable raising on their own if their parents are talking about it and feeling comfortable going, you know, today I was a little anxious or I was a little overwhelmed.
Being able to name their feelings.
Yeah. And have them have a healthy relationship to mental health in general.
And then what are some of the warning signs that parents should be on the lookout for when it comes to mental health?
So NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, has wonderful checklists. So I encourage people to look there. But there are some top signs and symptoms that people can look for around their teens and, you know, changing their performance. I think people, people like oftentimes don't realize that performance is something that is a signal. So behavior is really something that people should be looking at. Excessive worry or anxiety, hyperactivity behavior, reoccurring nightmares, and then obedience challenges or aggression.
I think sometimes too, especially for teenagers, we dismiss a lot of these signs because we're like, oh, they're teens. Yes. Or even with depression, we'll miss it in teens because we'll say, oh, they're teenagers, they're just going through a hormonal imbalance, when a lot of these mental issues spring up in actual adolescence.
Right, and never underestimate the power of asking, are you okay? Really, how are you doing? And the connection of eye contact. We are so connected with our technology nowadays that we're even more connected, but yet really disconnected face to face. So really just checking in and looking eyeball to eyeball and saying, how are you really doing?
Exactly. And this continues as we get older, because I know that you're working on something new now. Tell me what you're working on.
Absolutely. I am really committed to making a difference in the workplace. We spend how many hours a day in the workplace? We have such a great opportunity to really have cultures in the workplace be much more compassionate and understanding. I had a friend of mine call me to tell me that a colleague that nobody had any indication of was not feeling well took their life. And so I'm out to help companies create a culture of inclusion, compassion, and connection that prevent that sudden loss of life that no one was predicting.
Have any idea? You're
exactly.
Right, absolutely, because you're supposed to be spending, what, 8 hours at work? We all know it's longer than that.
Exactly.
And so these are the people that become your trusted confidants. So resources, you can go to the National Alliance on Mental Health. That's NAMI.org. Also, you're offering free peer-to-peer community, 18%.org, correct?
Yes, it's a great resource. It's free, it's anonymous, and just keep the conversation going with anyone with a mental illness.
Absolutely. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And we'll be right back with more Midday Maryland right after this. Stay tuned.